Joe, did you see the recent news about OpenSea and the crypto funks?
Today? No, I didn't see it.
Yeah. So back in June, a project that was a parody of the CryptoPunks called CryptoFunks got delisted on OpenSea because of a DMCA takedown notice. And so you could no longer access the contract through OpenSea's website. And at that point, the CryptoFunks were selling at around 0.2 Ether. And then someone 15, 16 hours ago discovered that although OpenSea had disabled the web access, they hadn't disabled the backend proxy contract that was handling auctioning of CryptoFunks. And they were still listed at the old 0.2 Ether price, except the market has gone up since then. And the floor price for CryptoFunks is about 0.5, 0.6 Ether. And so you could go to that contract and buy them at 0.2 and then sell them on another marketplace at 0.6, making 0.3, 0.4 Ether per sale. And there were about 125 or 130 still listed. And so then
it's a bit of an arbitrage.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the thing, is if you disable the front end access in your website, but you don't close off the back end, then of course anybody who knows enough can still go in and directly access the blockchain contract and take advantage of it. So a real oversight by OpenSea. And
wow.
The guy who discovered it was tweeting like mad to try and get them to pay attention to him, but they didn't respond. And I think something like 30 or 40 have effectively been bought from the OpenSea contract at much under the market price.
And they can't stop it.
Well, hopefully OpenSea have now disabled the proxy, and people who had CryptoFunks and had them listed and hadn't delisted them, there's a helper website being set up by someone to allow them to delist them, which of course is what OpenSea should have done in the first place.
If they knew about it, but they didn't know about it. Yeah.
Well, no, it's OpenSea's contract. So they should know about their own proxy auctioning contract.
Well, the guy who discovered it was tweeting and they weren't paying attention, right?
No.
Yeah.
Well, so kind of sad for the people who lost them. Anyway, we're already a couple of minutes in. Yeah,
it's a good warm up.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Well, welcome back. Hopefully, we get everybody back, but we've got some here, and maybe we'll just keep going. Keir Finlow-Bates, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. We were on our master's program before, which I described earlier in one of the talks about a little bit what our master's program. We have the conferences, and so I appreciate you being here to share your knowledge and wisdom and perspective with us. Again, I'll just do a little intro. So Keir is the author of Move Over Brokers, Here Comes the Blockchain, and is a prolific inventor with 15 blockchain patents, and is the creator of the popular Souls token. I'll share the link in our chat here. Has an MA in math and engineering from Cambridge and a PhD in math and education from London South Bank University. He's going to present today on whatever he wants, but I think it will include his user base's experiences with launching an NFT contract on the Binance Smart Chain. And since it's the World Binance Forum, that's relevant. And so take it away. The floor is yours.
Hey. Thanks very much. I have as my first line that I am to introduce myself, but Joe's done an excellent job there, so I can move straight on. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to start off by talking about an NFT project I started for fun and why I picked Binance Smart Chain. And then I'm going to go through some of the problems I had with that and some of the concerns I had. But then I'm also going to talk about some of the good things about Binance Smart Chain. And then finally, I'm going to discuss some of the problems that my users had. So I've only got 25 minutes, so we'll try and keep it sort of high level and brief. So the project I had was to launch an ERC 721 contract, which is the fancy name for an NFT contract. And what I wanted to do was cram as much into it as I could just to make it interesting. So it's a contract that mints NFTs, which people can then transfer between each other. And what it does on the website is it retrieves your profile picture and your name from your social media account, such as Facebook or LinkedIn or GitHub. I think the other one is Twitter, with your permission, of course, because you have to authorize that. It compresses your picture down to 24 by 24 pixels and mints an NFT with that. And then I throw a whole load of stuff in, pretty much everything except the kitchen sink. It creates a pseudo-random number for the NFT. It gives the NFT something that I call a level. It stores the picture on the chain. So there's a 24 by 24 pixel image then indelibly put on the Binance Smart Chain, which is something the CryptoPunks could have done, but didn't. And I added a proof of work verification function in. So this means that you can actually mine to make the level of your NFT better. Now, if that all sounds a bit confusing to you, well, if you go to souls.fi, there's a whole load of stuff there explaining it, and you can even have a go at minting your own one if you want to. But do read the terms and conditions, because you are putting some information about yourself on the blockchain, and it's you who's doing it, not me. The website is just acting as an interface that you're controlling. Oh, and there's also a charity function included, so that when you mint, you have to pay a small fee, and half of that goes to an address of a charity, except it doesn't. So I will talk about that near the end. So that's the quick intro. And as I said, souls.fi, and you can actually, someone's put the link up there. Thank you very much. Then you can go and have a look and read up about it. And I think it's a lot of fun, and it illustrates that NFTs can be about a lot more than just a picture on a web server somewhere. So, well, why did I pick BSC is probably the first question, because there's a lot of choices out there. You can go with Ethereum, you can go with Polygon, XDAI, Immutable X. You can go on a completely different style of blockchain like Cardano or Solana or something like that. So the reasoning I had is I'd used Polygon. I didn't like the way that Polygon connects to Ethereum. There's this thing called bridging, which is how you get your assets off one chain and onto another one in a decentralized manner. And on Polygon, there are a few confusing things about that. Second thing is that I occasionally provide advice to a project called NFT Alley. There are a bunch of guys in India who have an NFT marketplace, and they picked Binance for whatever reason they had. So I thought, well, I'm occasionally giving them some advice, so let's use their chain for this. But really, I think one of the issues that all these different blockchains connected to Ethereum, the so-called layer 2 blockchains, have, is that developers pick them pretty much at random and then settle on it. So it really tends to be the first one that you come across that you use. And I think that provides a bit of a headache for the layer 2 providers. So then it's more about marketing. How aware are people that you have this layer 2 solution? So that's the reasoning behind using Binance. So problems that I had with Binance Smart Chain. Well, the first one is that I'm still not verified on Binance. There's a facial app that you have to use in order to get verified. It didn't like my beard, so I actually trimmed it a little bit shorter. Then it was okay with it, but it didn't like my glasses and told me to take them off. When I did that, then I couldn't read the error message that came up after that. And I asked my daughter to look over my shoulder and tell me what she saw. And she said, oh, it's got an error message saying not allowed to have two faces in the frame at the same time. I think she was joking about that, but because I didn't have my glasses on, I couldn't tell whether she was lying or not. Anyway, it's not the end of the world if you can't get on Binance, because there's more than one way to get hold of BNB, which is the native cryptocurrency of the Binance chain. It's like Ether on the Ethereum chain. The thing is, you can't, if you're holding Ether, you can't spend it on the Binance chain because you need to get it across there. And this is where bridging comes in. You can take your Ethereum account, you can go to the Binance bridging page, and you can take your Ether and transfer it onto Binance, and then it becomes something called wrapped Ether on Binance. So it becomes a token on Binance, and your Ether on the Ethereum chain is locked up. So that's a bit like taking US dollars when you're in the United States and giving them to an exchange bureau, and then they give you euros back. Now you have a currency you can spend in Europe. And then eventually, if you're fed up of holding on to a lot of euros, you can go back to the exchange bureau and hand over your euros and get your dollars back. Now, the problem is that in order to be able to execute transactions on a blockchain, you need to pay for them using the native cryptocurrency of that chain. So as I said, in Ethereum, it's Ether. Ether is pretty easy to get hold of. All the exchanges sell and buy it. Some of them you don't have to go through the awkwardness of a facial recognition app. So I had a bunch of Ether and I went to the bridge. The problem I had is the first time I used it, I didn't notice that you've got a little option at the bottom to convert some of your Ethereum Ether into BNB coins. So I did a transfer and paid the gas fees on Ethereum. It was about $70 at the time. And I ended up with a wallet on Binance that held wrapped Ether and not a single unit of Binance coin, BNB. So that meant I couldn't even unlock the wrapped Ether on the Binance chain because I didn't have the native cryptocurrency to pay to do so. That's a bit like arriving in Europe with your dollars, wanting to exchange them into euros, and finding out that the exchange bureaus will only change dollars to euros if you pay a little fee in euros first, and you don't have a single euro in your pocket. What do you do then? Well, there's a number of things you can do. You can beg in the street for someone to give you just the couple of euros you need to be able to conduct the exchange, which is what some people do. The other thing you can do is just do the transfer again, and this time check the little box at the bottom of the bridge page saying, I want to convert my Ether into wrapped Ether on Binance, and I want a small amount of my Ether to be converted immediately into Binance coin to give me the coins I need to be able to do transactions. So that's what I did. And so this is the issue that layer 2 blockchains have. Polygon has it, Binance has it, that it's awkward. It's kind of like Ethereum is the big attractive fairground ride at the entrance to the fairground. So you walk in and you immediately see that ride, and it's the one that you can go on. And then further in the back of the amusement park, there are these other rides that are not quite as big. And you need different tokens to use them. And so most people kind of walk in and go straight to the first thing and ignore the stuff that's in the back. And it's a problem for these layer 2 projects to overcome. So anyway, that's the problem with all the bridging stuff. And then the other thing is poking around the Binance site. They have a lot of documentation. I have to admit, some of it's surprisingly bad in terms of the translations. It seems to have been translated from some language other than English. And you'd think that if a company with the kind of funds that Binance has is operating, that they would actually make sure that everything looked professional and glossy. But it doesn't. And again, this is one of the issues that these kind of projects have. You want them, if you're going to get traction, you want them to look convincing. And to be honest, some of the bits, it looked a bit slapdash. And I think in the DeFi and crypto space, that's a particular concern because the guys who are running the scams, they're not putting any effort into actually providing a back-end service. They're just trying to get your money off you. And they do a really good marketing job on the whole. So you kind of, if you're making yourself look worse than them, then that's not a good sign. But I don't know, maybe Binance has got a lot of other things on their plate. I certainly know they're having some problems with regulation at the moment. So then the actual Binance chain, well, I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. It's a proof of stake chain, not a proof of work one like Ethereum. And from what I can tell, the verifiers that are running on Binance are under the control of Binance. So for hardcore decentralization fanatics, that's going to be a bit of a concern that it's not as decentralized as it could be. My take is that, well, there's a reputation at stake here. So it's not going to look good for Binance Smart Chain if it's not run fairly. In fact, the whole thing could come collapsing down in a moment, because if there's one thing you notice in the crypto world, it's that it doesn't take much for there to be a massive exodus. If people get the impression that something's bad and there is another better almost as popular choice out there, people are very ready to jump ship. And this is something I think OpenSea should pay attention to. I was talking about earlier, that they're making an awful lot of mistakes, and at some point it's going to cost them. So anyway, but back to Binance, because that's the aim of this talk. There's other simple things as well. If you've got, for example, MetaMask, your wallet installed on your browser, one of the convenient things that Ethereum has is that it's there on the list of chains that are supported. In fact, an initial installation of your crypto wallet, MetaMask, will have the Ethereum main chain and a bunch of Ethereum test chains on it, and that's it. And if you want to use one of these layer 2 chains like Binance or Polygon, you have to manually add the chain. Except you don't. It is actually possible to make a website where you click on a button and it adds the chain for you. And in fact, my souls.fi site has that. It'll add the network for you if you don't have it on your wallet. But Binance doesn't seem to offer that service on their website. So again, for such a big company, I'm kind of wondering, well, why wouldn't they add that kind of level of convenience to their service for their clients? But again, I don't have a direct line to any of the senior people in Binance, so maybe they'll get around to it at some point. And then the final issue, and I said earlier on, I alluded to it, the final issue I had is to do with charities. One of the things I wanted to do was to give half of any tokens that I raised from my project to charity. Now, the odds of your project being successful, of course, are very, very low. It's like the odds of you becoming a famous modern artist. The fact is that most people don't make it. But I wanted, in the back of my mind, I thought, well, there is that kind of 1 in 100,000 chance that the project takes off and it becomes really popular. And I would like to make sure that some good comes out of it. It's all very well for me to get some coin in my pocket, but I wanted to make it clear to everybody that half of the proceeds are going to charity, guaranteed through smart contracts. So my contract automatically takes half of the fees that it gets and shunts them off to an address for a charity. The problem I faced was that charities out there haven't really cottoned on to the fact that the crypto world is full of people who have suddenly found themselves immensely wealthy, and in many cases would like to hand some of that on for the better good of mankind. But the charities, if you're lucky, might have a Bitcoin address or an Ethereum address that you can pay to, but they don't support the other coins. And I posted quite a bit about this on LinkedIn and asked people if they knew of any. The only charity I could find that accepts Binance's coin, BNB, is Binance's Charity Foundation. And so at least there's one charity. But my feeling there is, firstly, the issues that they're addressing are not the ones that I'm concerned about them, but I'm not directly concerned about them. I have some areas that I try to contribute to. And secondly, I'm already tied to the Binance chain, and they're already taking fees off me and my users for using them. I don't want it to just be Binance, Binance, Binance from start to end. However, the money that's been raised, or the coin that's been raised, is currently sitting in a holding wallet. Fortunately, it's transparent, so everybody can see it, and they know that I haven't run off with it. And secondly, it's only about $300, so it's not it's not even tempting to take it. But it would be nice if there were charities out there that actually got their act together. And I think it's a trick that a lot of them are missing. So if any of you work for a charity, go and suggest to them, support the acceptance of more than just Bitcoin and Ethereum, and think about actually hiring a crypto charity member of staff, somebody whose responsibility is to handle the acceptance of cryptocurrency, in the same way that charities have finance officers to handle the processing of ordinary fiat currency. It's a big untapped opportunity out there. So a hint, if you're in charity, or if you know somebody, you've got a close friend who is, big gold mine there for that charity. Okay, so those were my areas of concern. The good stuff is that it all just ran really well. Binance Smart Chain works just like Ethereum. So if you've used Ethereum and you've put out many contracts on it like I have. Switching to Binance is just a matter of changing a few lines in your deployment script and it all works. Once you've got your BNB coin to pay for the stuff. So that's the positive. And I did say that I was going to talk a bit about problems my users had. And again, the main one is the bridging. It's as simple as that. It's the one that the layer twos just haven't cracked, to the point that people who are already struggling with using a crypto wallet on Ethereum to do stuff, it just adds an extra hurdle for them to get over. And I haven't got any hard and fast solutions, but I do think that actually sitting down with some users and watching them struggle, like even me, I mean, I've been working in crypto for years, and I had to do it twice because I missed the little checkbox the first time around and the significance of it. So it's a UX problem, it's a user experience problem, and they really need to sit down with inexperienced users and see the problems they face and talk to them about their experience so that they can then actually initially address the simple stuff and then hopefully eventually make it all work seamlessly pretty much in the background. And so I think that is pretty much about it. We've got 10 minutes left for questions. So I'll open the floor up for those.
And people can use the chat too. I don't know if you want to monitor that, if you prefer people to talk out loud.
Well, it's nicer to hear a voice, but I'm also able to read, so either way's fine.
Well, maybe I'll just start it off. What really, the NFT space in particular, it sounds like you were, before you did on Binance Smart Chain, you were also doing it on Ethereum. What about that particular, that particular sphere within the crypto excited you? Are you an artist, or you just, what gets you going about it?
I'm a technology person. I sort of got into blockchain in 2010 when someone handed me a copy of Satoshi Nakamoto's paper. And with a maths background and nearly 20 years in computer software, I thought the technology was fascinating. I mean, it involves cryptography and peer-to-peer networks and databases, all stuff that I find interesting. So, and then like a lot of people who got involved in that, you start going down what they call the rabbit hole, where you start discovering that you know nothing about economics or politics really, other than the kind of bar talk type politics. You know, can't they do things better? That you certainly have no idea how our financial system works. And you know, back in 2010, 11, 12, I didn't understand what had gone wrong in 2008. You read the newspapers and it's like, yeah, it's all this stuff about CDOs and credit default swaps. And then you look and you just kind of read them and go, oh, the naughty banks, yeah, they've messed up again. But like 99% of people out there had no idea what had actually gone wrong, or why it just keeps going wrong. So that was a big sort of learning lesson. And the thing that I like about NFTs is that when you start digging into them, you start looking at what is the real meaning of ownership. And this is actually one of the things that blockchain just kind of touches on again and again. What does it actually mean to own something? Because people have very strong feelings about things that they own. However, when you ask people about it, what does it mean for you to own a house? What does it mean for you to own a pocket knife? They don't really know. And it's the same with money. You know, what is money? You ask most people, they will tell you the practical thing, which is it's, you know, pieces of paper or a piece of plastic, and I get food from the supermarket when I wave it around and hand it over. But they don't actually understand the mechanics of how it works. And this is where blockchain is fantastic, because it gives you a crash course education in how all this works, but from a different perspective. You know, there's the usual thing. It's like, why don't our schools teach us about this? Well, I think they've got enough on their plates already. But it is a good point that these are all the things that make society work, and the people who understand them can use that knowledge to their advantage. And I really think that it's something that we all need to have a better understanding of, just so it's not as easy to take advantage of us. So does that kind of in a roundabout way answer your question of why am I involved in this?
Yeah, I mean that's blockchain and crypto kind of generally, but specifically with
Yeah.
NFTs, what about like that particular sphere within it?
I think with NFTs, it was because I had the impression that people in the art world completely misunderstood them. Um, I used to lecture mathematics for computer scientists at South Bank back in the 90s. And in computing, there are these things called pointers, where rather than saying, here is a thing, you say, here is a pointer to a thing. And one of the interesting things is that to some people, it's a trivial concept. It's like you have the moon and you have a finger pointing at the moon, to use a Zen koan. And people can very easily tell the difference between the moon and a finger pointing at the moon. A dog can't. If any of you have a dog, when you have a ball and the dog can't find it, you point at the ball, the dog looks at your finger. It doesn't understand that your finger is a pointer to the ball. The funny thing is the same thing is going on in NFTs. Art NFTs are pointers to art. And people are conflating the things and thinking that the NFT is the art, and it's not. The NFT is a pointer to the art. I'm going to be releasing a video tomorrow where I use the analogy of a picture frame. You can imagine that the NFT is the picture frame, and then the JPEG is the picture within that frame. And what you're buying and selling is the frame, and the actual picture inside it is not owned by you. And one of the issues you have in the digital space is that unlike the physical space, where when someone like Rembrandt or Van Gogh slaps paint on a canvas, they're the only one who can do it as a Rembrandt or a Van Gogh. In the digital world, once the JPEG is out there, anybody can make a copy of it, or 10,000 copies of it. So now you have a picture frame that is pointing to a picture, but anybody can make a copy of that picture as well. So the only thing that distinguishes you from the other people who have a copy of the JPEG is that you have the frame and nobody else can have that frame. So that's kind of why I got into NFTs, is just trying to explain to people that it's not doing what they think it is doing.
Interesting.
Okay, I saw someone had a question there. Oh, quite a few of them just sort of scrolled on, didn't they? Let's go through them. Have I talked to Giving Block? I have looked at them. They only handle Ethereum and Bitcoin, and they act as a kind of proxy for charities. So one of the things to do would be for them to actually support other wallets. So I think that answers that one. What would happen with Ethereum or Binance Smart Chain if Vitalik or CZ? I don't know, is it CZ or CZ? I don't know. I've only ever read it. Would disappear. Well, Ethereum should keep running if Vitalik disappeared, but I imagine there would be some shocks to the price of the Ether cryptocurrency. But it's not like Ethereum requires him to be alive to function. If CZ disappeared, that would probably be hit Binance quite hard as a company. Whether or not they'd survive, well, it's a company isn't one person, a blockchain isn't one person. So they should just continue to run along, but there'll be an economic impact. To give a parallel, if, for example, Elon Musk was to disappear tomorrow, I imagine that SpaceX and Tesla would collapse, because the whole confidence in Musk's ecosystem or constellation of companies is dependent on his personality. It is a bit of a personality cult. I don't think that Binance or the Ethereum blockchain are kind of tied to the same personality cult. So it should be all right, but that's my take. Maybe somebody else has a different opinion. What is the next evolution of NFTs? Well, I think the first one where they're really going to take hold next is games, because the game companies are finally cottoned on it. I've been talking about this for 4 or 5 years, that there are so many advantages to startups in the game space to actually start taking on the incumbents by adding the possibility of your game objects to not be tied to the game itself. At the moment, if you buy V-Bucks in Fortnite, you can get items in Fortnite and they stay in Fortnite. And if Epic decides tomorrow that they're going to shut down Fortnite, then all the money you spent on V-Bucks and goods is gone. However, if those items were represented by NFTs on a blockchain, that would allow other games to say, well, we're going to respect the items from Fortnite and we're going to allow you to use them in our game. And so I think there's an opportunity for small games companies. And you've got to remember, gaming is bigger than the movie industry, right? This is not a small space. I mean, music is 10 times bigger than books. Movies are 10 times bigger than music, and games are 10 times bigger than the movie industry. So there's a huge amount of cash there. And it's going to a small number of game companies. So I think NFTs have an opportunity to disrupt the attitude that people have towards games, to the point that eventually it's just going to be game items have to be represented by NFTs. I could go on about that for half an hour, but I won't, because we've got 1 minute, I think. Mary had a question about The Big Short. Don't really understand the question. I mean, yes, the Big Short kind of discusses how some people made money off the financial crisis of 2008. Yeah, you could make another version of it for cryptos. There's enough drama in the space for there to be plenty of subplots and fun to be had. So yeah. Okay. I think we're out of time, Joe.
Here, there's one more question that was, I think, sent directly to me, was meant for you here. So I'll just read it from Fraser. You posted yesterday regarding gas fees. Do you have a quick moment to touch on this? Which method do you suggest for large NFT collections? Thank you kindly.
Okay, probably a bit too long to go into here, but the short of it is that whereas 4 or 5 years ago, when projects like CryptoPunks launched, the price of Ether was low and the gas price, i.e. the cost of running your code on the Ethereum blockchain, was low. So you could create an NFT collection with 10,000 tokens and it was a question of dollars. The shocking fact is now that if you were to launch the same contract today, to mint those 10,000 NFTs would cost about $1 million. And this is what these layer 2 chains such as Binance and Polygon are actually addressing, which is, can we get the prices down? And they do. 10,000 NFTs on Binance, I think, would cost you about $4,000, I think was what I calculated, or maybe 400. I can't remember where the decimal place is. And on Polygon, it's about $50 or $60. So much more affordable. But the flip side is that the Ethereum blockchain is kind of a luxury brand thing. And I actually have a video where I'm sort of talking about, well, it's much more expensive to launch stuff on Ethereum, but if what you're trying to do is address a market where you're going to be selling these tokens for millions, then they need to be on the Ethereum blockchain, because the Ethereum blockchain is like a brand like Gucci or Armani, and Binance and Polygon are more like, the same items of clothing or sunglasses, but from your local supermarket. Cheaper, just as good at protecting your eyes from the sun or keeping you warm, but they don't have that kind of glamour that Ethereum has. And if you're dealing with art, then it's as much, if not more so, about the reputation and the appearance than it is about the mechanics underneath. So, and I don't know, was there a question about how you can get them down? Or anyway, I don't think there's time to go into the in-depth.
Here, actually, either luckily or unluckily, depending on your time, we've got 10 minutes before the next person. She said, give me 10 minutes before she can jump on.
Okay.
So if you have the time, I'm sure people have more questions, and you got a lot to say. So
yeah, well, I've got another 10 minutes. So
yeah.
Someone asked there, how important is it to actually know the people behind these organizations? Are we talking about the organizations behind the blockchains or behind the contracts on the blockchain? Because I think I was talking before about Binance, that it's what's called a proof of stake, which means that it's not anybody who can just come in and verify the blocks that are added. And perhaps it's worth touching here on the issue of transaction censorship. So one of the things that blockchains solve is the issue that if you have a bank account, then your bank has a ledger in a database keeping track of your balance and what you've spent and how much money you've transferred in. And the idea is that when you go to the shop and try to spend some money with your card, the transaction goes through and the shop gives you your bag of potatoes and your sack of onions. The issue is that banks have an immense amount of control over these transactions. They can decide that you shouldn't be in Egypt, therefore the fact that you're trying to buy a pina colada in Hurghada must be somebody else, so they block the transaction. And then, I'm talking from personal experience here, I'm there at the bar trying to pay for a drink and I can't have a drink because my bank has decided, and they're doing it to protect me, but it's frustrating. And similarly, some banks decided that they weren't going to allow people to use their banking cards to buy cryptocurrencies because they didn't approve of them. Now that is much, much worse because they're making a censorship decision. They're saying, we as the bank are going to decide what you can or cannot spend your money on. So the idea behind a blockchain is that there isn't a central authority that has that kind of control over what transactions are allowed to go through and which are not. Flip side is you have a lot more responsibility. If you lose your keys, you lose all your money and you have no bank to go to and say, are you FDIC insured? Can I have my money back, please? So, whenever you have a compromise, there's benefits and there's disadvantages. The issue with these proof of stake chains is that there's a risk that the censorship can creep back in. They're not as decentralized as things such as Ethereum or Bitcoin, because there are a smaller group of people who may have a vested interest who are actually controlling the transactions that go on. However, from a practical point of view, there's not really any reason why these validators would reject your transactions and allow other transactions to go through, because they probably don't know who you are. What you're doing is going to be within the bounds of the blockchain anyway. What do they have to gain by censoring your transactions? But there is that risk. It's small, but it's still there. So that's the blockchain one. As for the contracts, well, lots of contracts are launched anonymously, so we don't know who's behind them. And that's, of course, where there's a risk that I can secretly put out an NFT contract that looks like it's a perfectly normal contract, mint some NFTs, let's say they get traction and they become really, really popular. I may have put a backdoor in that allows me to lift them out of somebody's wallet and put them into my own with just a few keystrokes. And you would have to go and look at the code to actually determine that it's okay. And this is why in DeFi, the companies have audits, and they're not cheap. Auditing companies typically will start at sort of $10,000 for an audit of a basic contract and just goes up from there. So the idea there is that because an auditing company that we may have heard of has audited the contract, it's going to be safe. But even there, bugs still creep through and backdoors still creep through. So it's, as someone I think mentioned earlier, it's the wild, wild west. It's still early days. We've had the same with pretty much everything in human existence. Just go and look at the history of the stock market pre-World War II. Insider trading was rife because it wasn't considered illegal at that point. That's how the Kennedy family got their fortune. And at that point, insider trading wasn't a bad word. It wasn't even a word. It's just what people in the know did. Then we started having laws to say, hang on a minute, this isn't fair. And of course, you've got the same with all sorts of activities in human existence. When it's early days for something, a new continent's discovered or a new technology comes about, you have the sort of early crazy days. Then eventually it all settles down. So in the meantime, why not enjoy the excitement of being able to witness something that's new?
And insider traders actually, there's an argument that they make a market, because people don't bring their information to the market, and that, that makes for a more efficient price.
Yeah, but you've got to sort of ask, is it really fair that they get the kind of rewards that they do? Right? And the information has to get there somehow. Now, and I know this is the flip side of it, is you end up with this, if you take it to its crazy logical extreme, if you get to the point that everybody has exactly the same information, then everybody should be making the same trades, right? And that's kind of where we're getting to with the SEC's approach to stock markets, is that ultimately it's just going to be, high frequency traders trying to get as close as possible to the exchange, doing the same stuff. So, because if everybody has exactly the same information, then they should all come to the same conclusions, unless you throw some randomness in there. So yeah, it's odd. There has to be some kind of disparity, otherwise you don't have a market.
Right, exactly. Well, Keir, thank you so much for your generous time. We've gone over 10 minutes, and now Myrtle is in the room. So please stay around if you'd like.
I would love to, but it's Sunday afternoon, and so
sure.
it's my
Father's Day too.
It's Father's Day here too. Yes. Oh God, you should
All
see
right, well,
some.
enjoy.
Yeah, let me just show you. There we go. This is the kind of stuff I received today.
Oh, amazing.
That's a pen holder. But yeah, I've got to go and look after the kids now. So have a great time, guys. Thanks for listening to me, and good luck, Myrtle. I think it was, wasn't it? Okay. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.